right. All right. Serious moment. We're doing it. We're doing it. Oh my gosh.
We're doing it. Okay.
Building our community
at Circle Time,
learning from each other
at Circle Time. When we come together, there's no mountain we can't climb. Come join us for Circle Time.
Hello, everyone. We are so glad you're here with us today. My name is Rachel, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Membership Coordinator and Policy Analyst at the Association of Early Childhood Educators Ontario, or the AECEO, and I will be one of your co-hosts today.
And I am Patricia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the communications coordinator at the AECEO. And guess what? I'm also a co-host.
And my name is Jess. My pronouns are they, them, and I am one of the community organizers at the AECO and also a co-host.
So we are so excited to be launching Circle Time with the AECEO. And this, as you probably already know, is our first episode. We are going to talk about the following things. We'll do some more thorough introduction of our co-host team. We'll talk about why we at the AECEO decided to start a podcast, and we will outline what you can expect from our podcast moving forward. So to start us off, I'm going to pass the mic to Jess for a bit of a longer introduction. Jess?
Thank you. Again, I'm a community organizer. I like to think of my job as kind of a conduit for all the people in our sector to have a connection point. So I am hopefully the person that acts like a little bit of glue for our sector to be able to keep us together, to pass along messages, to maybe even translate some messages from communities to communities. My ECE journey started when I lived abroad for a little while, and I ended up teaching children for the first time. Prior to that, I was teaching adults. And once I got to that kindergarten classroom and was with those kids, I realized there's no way I could ever go back to adult education. My calling was for young children, especially in the early years. So I went back to school as a mature student. I found my purpose and also some things that were not that great for me. And that sort of those two things put together, the love that I had for ECE, but also kind of the discontent I had with the way in which I was invited to work in this field and the working conditions, made me really think about how I could last long in this sector. And that's where I came to advocacy. So I'm curious now, because although I work with Patrícia pretty much every day, what does the ECE journey look like for you?
My name is Patrícia Borges Nogueira. I am the communications coordinator at the AECEO. And how did I get here? I accidentally became an ECE. I decided to enroll in the ECE program at George Brown College because ECE seemed like a sure pathway to immigration. I'm originally from Brazil. So after I finished university, my degree is in journalism. I worked as an English as a foreign language teacher for a few years and saved up money and then moved here. And I say I accidentally became an ECE because I fully intended on changing careers or finding out what I wanted to do once I had my PR and I could do whatever, could go back to school and not pay an arm and a leg, or just an arm. So the first moment that I realized that, it was like, oh, this was not, what a happy accident. I think that I found myself. What is happening? Was during my second placement with preschoolers. I became involved with advocacy during school. My last placement was at the OCBCC, the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare, which, if you follow the AECEO work, you are probably familiar with with the OCBCC as well. And after I graduated, I worked on the floor. Being an ECE on the floor and being an ECE through the pandemic, at least the first year of the pandemic, really changed me and changed my view. And I have been in this role for 2 years, and I find that it's like the perfect mix of my academic background and my passion, because I want, like, being an ECE changed my life, and there's nothing more that I want than to live in a world where we can be ECEs and thrive, not just survive or not just scrape by. And I feel like doing this work, I get so close to, at least working towards that.
I just get so emotional when I hear both of your stories, because there's like a common thread, I think, between the three of us. And I'm going to say between a lot of people working in ECE, which is that we found ourselves in kind of a situation where the work in the field just spoke to us. So I kind of started my ECE journey working as a nanny to twins. And I would take these twins to an early on center close to their house. And when I met ECEs for the first time, it was it was just such a light bulb moment, such an aha moment, because I realized that there were people whose job it was to care about children and families. And I just resonated with that so much. I saw my values being lived in a job, and I didn't know that was possible. And so I quickly enrolled in a diploma program. And in a lot of ways, the program that I took really, it did teach me a lot. But I also, as soon as I started getting into placement and kind of seeing what the work of an ECE actually was, it was so much more than just caring. There were so many things that also prevented ECEs from caring and living their values. And so I really felt like I was at this kind of crossroads of seeing so clearly what my work could be and how I could feel at home in it, but also that there was so many barriers to me actually getting to do that work. I graduated in March 2020, so not the best time to become uh an ECE. And I ended up going back to school to get my master's and do research about working conditions. And I got connected with the AECEO and felt that the work of this organization was really filling in a lot of gaps that I had experienced working in the field and doing research in the field. And I really think at the heart of the AECEO is that spark of care, and knowing that ECEs deserve to be cared for in the same way that they care for children and families every day, and that is the center and the heart and soul of our work in this field.
I really love that, Rachel. And that really is the common thread, right? Of like knowing that this work is important, knowing that this work is life changing, not only for the ones we're caring for, but for the ones providing the care. But also knowing there have been influences and systems that have been keeping us from doing this work in a sustainable way, that we're not draining ourselves dry.
Patricia, you just said what I was going to say in terms of like, that is one thread. And I think that for sure it runs through our community. But the other one is a bit of rabble rousing, a bit of dissent, a bit of diverging from the stereotypical, caregiver, especially from a women's perspective. We are not just here in service, which is totally true and totally admirable. We're also here to shake things up a bit. And I think that that is another really common thing inherent, because not a lot of people in this world would dedicate their lives to young children. That's already change in path for many people, but to do it in such a way that you literally are on the street, seeing things on the curb and thinking, maybe I could put that in my program. Or before you throw away the really good box that your delivery came in, you're like, maybe I should stop for a minute and I could make this into a rocket ship or something. Like, it is all encompassing. It is your entire way of approaching life.
Oh, yeah. That's such a good point, Jess, because there's being an ECE and working in this field, it makes you see the world differently.
Yeah.
It totally changes how you
look at
like you
recycling.
say, how you look at recycling. Yeah. And that's just like the beginning, right? Because then you meet
the tippy
children
top
and
of the
families.
iceberg.
Yeah, then you meet children and families who have completely different lived experiences from maybe what you have, and who are working in communities and for causes that you didn't really, well, at least I didn't really connect to the care of young children. But it's so tangled and messy in the most beautiful way.
The joy is undeniable, right? Because we know what will happen with that paper tube is going to be amazing. We don't even know what it's going to be, but we know it's going to be amazing.
That being said, any ECs out there that want a paper tube that's about 4 feet tall, hit me up on the AECEO Instagram, friends.
And I want to just say again, like, to kind of maybe even relate this to why we're doing this right now, because I think it's super understandable as to, I get it, why Patrícia has a 4-foot paper tube in their house, but maybe not a lot of people understand why we have a podcast. And I think that that's kind of another avenue where we're breaking new ground, where we're not doing the norm, wayfaring, right? We don't know where we're going, but we are curious and confident that our perspectives and our choices are going to lead to good things. So I'm actually curious, why do you two think it's important that we started this podcast?
When we become ECEs and when we work in childcare or in FTK, or even if you're just in school still, one of the first things we learn is the 4 foundations of learning. And maybe it was because I had never thought about those 4 words in English, especially the word belonging. I had never thought about it in Portuguese, so I had never thought about it in English either. And belonging sounded so beautiful. Like, it sounded like a word that it's like sing-songy, belonging. And I think that's part of that. There's such a big part of why I really wanted this to exist, is so that we can create a space where ECEs and folks that work in the sector, that works in early learning, in childcare, in early child education, in whatever capacity, in care with young children and families, can feel like they belong. We don't have a representation in pop culture. We don't have a representation in media. We don't have, and like, we're so cool. ECEs are so cool. And because we don't give ourselves the credit to claim that space, we don't have the energy to claim that space. And I feel like, as the Association of Early Child Educators of Ontario, we get that opportunity. This job feels like a privilege to me, because I might not be able to be doing the work that I would love to be doing with children and families, but I feel like the work I do one day is going to result. No, the work I do is going to result in one day that being a reality for educators. So I feel like I rambled on a little bit, but I also said why I think we should be doing a podcast. Rachel, what do you think?
I think that practically, the reason for a podcast, I mean, we have our email communication, we have social media, we have our website, but I think there was something missing in the way we communicate with our members, with our community, and with the public. We needed a space to have more longer form conversations, to think together, to, yeah, tease it out, really get to the bottom of why we're doing things and how we're thinking about things. Um, so this podcast, I think, is a lot about process, us talking about the journeys that we take rather than on social media. Maybe we'll put a product or an outcome of our work. But I'm hoping this podcast will be a space where we can talk about that process and learn from special guests and other people in our community about their process. And it's also a space where I'm hoping we can reach our community um, in the little moments between all the things going on in their lives while they're doing the dishes. They can pop on this podcast or on their commute. That covers it. What about you, Jess?
I also really wanted a space where we don't actually center children. And I know that sounds like what coming from an ECE, but like I said, it's our whole lives. When you look at recycling, you're like, what can I do with this? Give me 15 minutes a day. Give me half an hour where I'm actually here for me. And circle time is so tongue in cheek. I love the way that it kind of encompasses what is typically a child-centered time for us. And so that is another reason why I wanted to do this, was like, we're not, this podcast is not for children. We may be saying some things here that are definitely not for children, but it's meant for people who are working with children, people who prioritize children in their daily lives. So this is for us. And I think that was another really big reason why I wanted to do this. And we need to balance out the podcast landscape. There are too many podcasts out there that don't need to be there. We need to balance that out a little bit.
This is, I don't know. Does it sound silly to think that a podcast can be the means for us to, like, I don't know, start talking about this more openly with our community?
I feel like, Patricia, like, I know this is so silly. We don't have to keep this in, but I just want to tell you guys, my mind when you're saying that is just like, I want to put in air horn sound effects in the background because it's like, yes, yeah, exactly.
And maybe it's one of the teasers.
Oh, I love hearing you both speak, because I think it's clear at this point in the recording that we have so many different perspectives on our work, on the purpose of our podcast, but they're so layered and interconnected, and they all kind of come back to this place of ECEs and childcare workers are important. We deserve to take care of ourselves. We deserve spaces where we feel cared for and important. And that is our goal with this podcast, to fire people up, get people passionate, and also care for you in whatever small way we can on your commute, wherever you are.
We are making this conversation happen because we're so stuck in the systems that diminish us and that make us feel like we're not powerful. I feel like bringing people together, building the community, starting those conversations is like the stepping stone for us to gain our power back, to reclaim the space and the role of the ECE.
Like, hard agree. The one thing that I think is also our magic power and what makes me so sure is that even when we talk about power, we're not talking about traditional power. We don't need the ability to control people or the ability to manipulate people into doing things. That's not the kind of power we build as ECEs. We build power that means folks are taken care of. That means that your needs are met and that you are safe in places. So I also think that that's like another layer of what this podcast is for. It's also the power to transform society from like you said, Patricia, one that would diminish care. We're trying to find a society and build a society that would bolster care as the first inclination for people, the first thing that people get, and the last thing that they get before they go to sleep. So that way, we don't perpetuate these same systems. We're not just trying to climb to the top. We're going to climb to the top and break it all down.
So true. So true. I love how you put that, Jess. Jess, I'm wondering if you want to share with our listeners what kind of topics we're going to cover and what people can expect from our podcast in future episodes.
Yeah. Well, first, we will also be listening very closely to any of the feedback or any of the comments. Please check out social media. We're on Instagram, and just message us. Like, follow and message us. We'll cover what you folks want to cover. But in our minds, we also want for folks who are not in the childcare world to learn a little bit more from us about us, not through a third party or through our supervisors or through like our government relations. You can learn about us from just talking to us. And another part, I did say a little bit about government. This is also a way for us to translate some kind of either lengthy or confusing pieces of legislation or policies that we hope to advise or ones that we think need to go. It's a place for us to talk it out and make sure that everyone's perspective is being included in our work. So special guests, we have a couple lined up, but I'm also very excited about that, inviting people onto this podcast.
Anything to add, Patricia?
On our notes, we have what it's like to be an ECE/childcare worker today. And I think we're going to be talking about that, but I also think that we're going to be talking about what it could be like. The policy work the AECEO does, the community building work that the AECEO does is thinking about what it could be. It's thinking about this world that Jess was talking about, that I was talking about, that Rachel was talking about, this world where we get to do the work we love, and we thrive and we're healthy and we get to work and live in our communities. We don't have to go to be on a bus and a train for 2.5 hours to get to work. That we all have paid sick days, we all have vacation, we can all be supported in our professional development. This is not a world that's impossible. One of the things that I love the most about doing this work that we do is being reminded of that.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider becoming an AECEO member. The link to join membership will be in the episode description. Your membership makes a difference in the lives of ECEs and childcare workers, children, families, and allows us to continue doing our amazing work. To all the current members supporting us, thank you so much. To all the ECEs and childcare workers listening, you are incredible, amazing, just the best, and we're so privileged to get to do this work and know you.
That was awesome. We rocked it.